Hello, I'm Jeff Paur, senior writer with RealTime Fantasy Sports, and welcome to another edition of the RealTime Fantasy Sports Show. Right now, I'm doing my top 5 series for fantasy baseball, going over several different top 5 categories. And for today, I'm going to do cheap steals. So these are 5 players I think you can get for a good price if you're looking for stolen bases. I know stolen bases are a lot more prevalent with the rule changes, but still, sometimes you go early on players that don't steal a lot of bases. So you need to make up for that later in your draft. And these are some guys I think that can steal some bases and you can get them at a really good price. They all have ADPs over 200 except for one of them. And that's my first player. So my first cheap steal option is Xavier Edwards, the shortstop with the Miami Marlins. His ADP is 139, so you have to pay a little more for him, but still a pretty good price. He's an emerging young talent. He played 70 games last year, had 31 stolen bases in just 70 games, hit 328. I don't expect a repeat in average for him, but I think he'll be above average in that category, maybe hit around 280. So I like him as a good middle infield option that could steal a lot of bases. This is a guy that could steal 40 plus bases, so he could really help you in that category and the average part as well, and maybe run scored also. So Xavier Edwards is a good option for some cheap steals. All right, my next pick for cheap steals is Victor Robles of the Seattle Mariners. So the outfielder finally put it together last season. He had 328 with the Mariners after he was moved there. He had 34 steals last season, really a career season for him after really struggling to start his career. He was really expected for big things, but just didn't do a whole lot early in his career. But he looked good last year with the Mariners, and I think he can keep it up. His ADP is 207. He's capable of stealing 40 plus bases. I think he'll hit for a good average. Once again, not going to help you a lot in other categories. Run scored, he should be pretty good, but I think he's going to rack up the steals in Seattle this year. ADP just 207. My next cheap steal option is another outfielder, and it's Victor Scott. So we go from Victor Robles to Victor Scott. 2 Victors make the list. The outfielder with the St. Louis Cardinals, his ADP is 276, one of the higher ones on this list. He's having a great spring. I really think he has a good chance to be the starting center fielder for the Cardinals from day one this year. He struggled last year with his chances, hit under 180, so he really struggled, but he looks confident this spring. He refined his swing a little bit as well. The Cardinals want to go to a youth movement. It makes sense to put Scott in the outfield. Jordan Walker's hurt right now as well, so that maybe opens the door for Scott to at least get playing time early in the season. I think he's really capable. If he plays a full season in St. Louis, I think he could be a 40-plus stolen base type player. He bunts for hits. He knows how to get on base. Once he gets on base, he makes things happen. So I think Victor Scott's a good option later in drafts if you want to rack up some stolen bases. My next cheap steal pick is Jacob Young, another outfielder. He's with the Washington Nationals. They got a lot of good young players on their team. He gets overlooked a little bit. His ADP is 292. But he had 33 stolen bases in 150 games last season, 46 career stolen bases in 2 seasons. He hit 256 last year, so you look at that and you think that's not very good. But these days, that's actually above league average. So he hit above league average, easy for me to say. And I think he's a good bet to steal 30-plus stolen bases once again this year. He's penciled in to start in the outfield for the Washington Nationals. His ADP is 292, which is the worst of all 5 players I have listed for cheap steals. So you can get Young really cheap, a guy that could steal some bases, and I think he could help fantasy teams in that category most definitely. All right, my last pick is actually an injury-prone player, and he's always kind of scary to pick, but it's Trevor Story of the Boston Red Sox, shortstop eligible, 259 ADP. So he played just 26 games last year. Story has that injury history, like I mentioned, but he had 6 steals in 26 games. You put that over a 162-game season, that is 37 stolen bases. The new rules clearly benefited Story last year. He has 3 seasons for his career with 20 or more stolen bases. Again, always an injury risk. You can get him really cheap. He's going to rack up some steals as long as he's healthy. Also has some power potential. Red Sox should be improved this year as well. So I think he's a good buy low candidate for fantasy teams, especially if you're looking for steals later in your draft. All right, those are 5 of my cheap steal options for the coming fantasy baseball season. Don't forget to get in a fantasy baseball draft at RealTime Fantasy Sports. Go to rtsports.com, click on that Money League link, see everything we have to offer on there, all different price points, all different options for your fantasy baseball needs. This has been Jeff Paur for RealTime Fantasy Sports.